Hey, look, it's Tuesday. Actually, it's Wednesday. And this is Trekland, and we are live. Today, guest Wolf 359 Project co-author Andy Poulastides. Yay! Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, episode 340. Wow. Yes, with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek, boom, coming at you. Right here out of Trekland, out of Portal 47, out of all the good stuff for some clarity, sanity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. So I know it's an odd day, but here we are back. Again, continued Happy New Year's to everybody. It's a time with no fresh Trek, but there is still so much Star Trek out there, so many headlines, so much going on. And it's really a good time to catch a breath without all of our focus attention on the big headlines of the day. And it's a time to catch a breath and look what's going on. And that's what's happening today. Now, look, if you are new to us here, if you just saw something flash by in the socials and you thought, what's going on with this? Welcome over. We've got a lot of veteran TTLers here. If you see the chat, make sure you're in a chat place, however you're joining us today. And just remember, if you're coming in, please say hi. If you're new, especially, say hi where you're from, because this time of day, we've got folks around the globe. That's something I love to do with all my Trekland projects. Portal 47 also when we're live. So say hello, introduce yourself. Just be aware that if you are on Facebook, you're only seeing Facebook. If you're on Twitch and especially YouTube, you can see everything. And if you're on YouTube, you can even super chat us. We're monetized on YouTube now, and that's cool too. So normally this is a show where I get off on a soapbox. I have a little essay, a little theme that I like to do. Then we take a mini break, and then we dive into the chat at that time. But this is a special day. In the last year, we've been having guests on Tuesdays Live. So, and we're live. And that's what's happening today. I'm so thrilled to have our guest with us. What I'll do is monitor the chat, and the two of us will kind of keep an eye over there. So don't be alarmed if we miss your question. We may be so into what we're talking about. It's one-man band show today, so we're just watching ourselves. If it's something that you're just burning to ask it more than once. Like, let a little time go by, come back around. Hopefully we'll see it on the second or third time, okay? But no, I am excited because today we're just going to plunge right in and get to the guest, because this tickles a lot of you know where I am. Today we do things for audiences so much. We punditize, we do interviews. We're just talking about this I just got out of our European Portal 47 roundtable, Ask Dr. Trek, and we were just talking about interviewing for the case versus interviewing for an audience. And sometimes you give up interviewing what you want to do as source material just to entertain people. And sometimes people are easily entertained. But the thing that made me a Star Trek fan was this passion for the universe. And then later on, how the universe was made. And I don't mean in a theological sense, although the way some people worship Star Trek, maybe it is. But no, I'm talking about the thing that made me mystified, that just caught my imagination. After the initial wave of just watching the show after school on TV was the tech manual, the medical reference, Bijo's concordance, all those wonderful pieces that not only collected now what we call canon, but what I started to call gap filling and weaving the points. And we never got the other names of the ships. We never got what was down this corridor on this deck. And being able to start meshing that out so that people eventually, well, just the trivia hounds, but also things like gamers and cosplayers and model builders and everybody else who needs that, they can't set their life of Star Trek merely by what crumbs the people who, write the stories are going to throw at us that week. So yeah, the science and the minority at first, and now thanks to the internet, the explosion of all the headcanon folks who are putting it together, but even in a more organized way. The gaming world, tabletop and STO, adventures and STO, and all the ways, they need more detail. They need more data. aside from just folks that love the history. And that's why I keep my radar up for seeing folks like that doing. I'm so envious of those people because that's what I started to do. We can talk about that in a minute. That's why my radar was perked when I saw this flying by, folks working, and stellar cartography, I should say, to be fair to everybody, including myself. Stellar cartography is a huge part of, that's a case of overlapping real science with collecting all the data and then retconning or gap filling. So today it's such a thrill to have a guest from across the pond here in the middle of the day for us in the States. It's a thrill to have one of the co-authors of an amazing, I may cheat occasionally, but here on the pad, which is the way it's meant to be seen, we have engaged the Borg, which is the oral history of the Battle of Wolf 359. And if you know what an oral history is, you say, wait a minute, haven't most people at Wolf 359, died? Well, that's that gets the idea across. No, it's by Andy Poulastides and Eric Muirhead. We've got Andy with us today, and I'm so thrilled about this. Andy, come on in here. Boom, there we are.
Hello there.
Hello, sir. Coming to us from, where are you physically, actually?
I'm physically in Manchester in the UK. So
there we go.
As you say, far across the pond on the other side of the planet. But it is, the sun's over the I'm here, right? So I can drink.
That's an American phrase, isn't it? Across the pond. Or do the Brits
yes,
say
I believe it is.
Yeah. Nobody.
It goes both ways.
You say okay. It just struck me. I never thought to think that, to ask anybody when we were over there. So yes. So let's talk about this. The first thing I think of what I knew I've worked on, but just in the recent years, one thing that pops up, and you know what? Why don't I have you tell me how you describe your baby here, and how did it come about? Tell the unwashed exactly how to categorize this in their little Star Trek franchise brain.
Well, first of all, happy Enterprise Day. Today being the 17th of January, 1701. Yes. If you do the dates in the correct format as they are meant to be seen, which is day and month and all that. But
if you celebrate Enterprise Day, happy Enterprise Day.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do. How did this come about? I started this project. This has been living in my head pretty much since 1992.
Oh my goodness.
In the UK, when we got Star Trek over here, we only had like 4 channels at the time. BBC 2, 6 o'clock, Best of Both Worlds Part 1. It builds up, Locutus on screen, Mr. Worf, fire. You get that dramatic music beat, and then nothing. 6 months of nothing. There's no internet, there's no social media, and I was at school at the time, so there's not even any school holidays for me to go and actually kind of speak to people and just kind of geek out about this. So that build up, and then Part 2 lands, and you have the moment when they get to Wolf 359 and they fly through the debris of ships, and it was just like, because up until that point, I think the most starships we've ever seen on an episode of Star Trek was 4 in the Ultimate Computer, I think.
I was going to say Ultimate Computer had yeah, and that was obviously the prism effect or whatever.
Absolutely. So that really kind of stuck with us, and Star Trek was a big part of my life growing up. And I'd be the internet came along, you'd find web forums, and you'd have discussions with people. You'd talk about, would a Star Destroyer have survived at Wolf 359? Could a Star Destroyer destroy the Enterprise? Star Destroyers popped up a lot for some reason. It just kind of, it was a thing which just kind of dotted around there. I also, big fan of things like the tech manual, and your copy of Stellar Cartography, I'm afraid, flew out the window. I'll get to why later on. But
okay.
But I love treating Star Trek as a real world, as a real place, as a real thing. And
we reach
Wolf 359. Yeah, and Wolf 359, I think, is a seminal moment in the history of Trek. It is this moment where really everything changed, and it impacted everything that came afterwards. And how the book itself came along was basically, there was a thing that happened a couple of years ago. I don't know if you recall. A lot of us were kind of just staying in our homes with nothing else to do. And I found myself with some free time. And I thought throughout that entire period of the lockdown, I should write a book. I should get around to write a book. I should write a book. And I didn't. But then we got to the end of lockdown, and then I decided, actually, no, I really should write this book now. And that's when I met my erstwhile co-author, Eric Muirhead, who had previously written a large Star Trek fan project about the USS Pershing. And I said, hey, I've got an idea. My idea is World War Z, but for Wolf 359. And instantly he was like, I got it. I know exactly where you're coming from. That's great. And then over the next 22 months, we kind of fleshed out the story of what happened at Wolf 359. That's everything from the lead up to it, the battle itself, what came afterwards, trying to also connect all those dots because, you know, Star Trek, you know, it loves to retcon stuff. It loves to go back and suddenly say, hey, the Borg were in Enterprise. You know, it loves to have Voyager show up in every other week. It's just as a reference to Wolf 359 that wasn't there before.
It's also, well, let's stop a second. So not only, I mean, the obvious thing is Wolf 359 is what launches DS9. Not just launches the series, but launches the Sisko backstory, and we instantly are thrown in with Sisko and Picard and that tension, and that's what animates the origin arc of Sisko for DS9 is Wolf 359. But even beyond that, you know, Voyager started off being the series, and I know this from interviewing everybody back in the day, but it started being the series that was in the Delta Quadrant and distant, and you've got Mike Okuda and Rick and all those guys saying, guys, we put the Borg in the Delta Quadrant to be distant. This is going to be, you know, and they're like, oh yes, but we're concentrating on, we've got to do we can't do old, you know, we don't want to revisit the old stuff. This is about the new crazy weird. Well, by the third season and the coming of First Contact, the movie, Voyager feels we should cross promote a little bit. So they do the Unity, which was like what Chakotay comes across the lost Borg colony, right? And they do it thinking that's all they're going to do. And by the time they wrote that one mid-season, no big deal episode, get a few Borg things out of storage, they were like, oh my God. It's like, yes, we tried to tell you, you're totally missing. So that was the roots of what led to, you know, 7 of 9. And suddenly we're back revisiting Borg. But even more than that, now we're even retconning, and it popped up more than once. Suddenly we're talking, Unity was the first, but we're talking to survivors of Wolf 359. Oh, really? How did that, you know? So yes, even when you're in the Delta Quadrant, you're coming up with wacko threads of retconning back to, or adding to what happened at Wolf 359. And it's almost never stopped. So that had to add to the big pie, the big pizza pie that you had to deal with, right? To put this together. Just as a start.
Oh yeah. There was I mean, so what I will say about the book is, as much as possible, we have tried to stay true to the alpha canon. There is nothing in the book that directly contradicts anything that you see on any of the shows, and we reference every show. We've got references to Prodigy, Voyager, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, the original series, Next Generation. We've got references to everything in there, and we tie it together in such a way where it all makes sense. We get a little squiffy with beta canon, but beta canon just kind of contradicts itself as you go along anyway. So we kind of did that. No, the real fun happened. So let me cast your mind back to the end of last year. As you know, when a show is to come out, often they will send screeners out to companies, people to kind of advertise the show. And the book was pretty much finished. We were deep in proofreading the book at that point. And all of a sudden, a lot of these people who had seen the screeners start coming up to me and say, Andy, you're going to love Picard. You're going to love season 3 of Picard because they're going to talk about Wolf 359. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are we going to Wolf 359? Because all of a sudden, it's
define love.
This is the thing. It's like, I have just finished writing a book and now we're going back to Wolf 359. And they wouldn't tell me what was going on. They just told me there's references to Wolf 359 in there. So I'm instantly like going, okay. So Picard season 3 drops first episode. I'm watching it. And straight away, almost the very first shot is the Beverly's listening to Picard's log from Best of Both Worlds. So I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? So I'm listening through on this. And the only real thing which made me go roll my eye was a reference to a computer virus that apparently turned up on the Enterprise's computer. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can write that around that with like a paragraph somewhere. And so I did that. Right. But then we meet Captain Shaw, and straight away, you know, we're going like, there's something going on here with Captain Shaw. And then we get to that episode with that wonderful monologue from Todd Stashwick, which is absolutely a magnificent talking about his experience at Wolf 359. And instantly we're like, okay, this is fantastic. I mean, this is right out of a book. But then we're like, this needs to be in the book now. So then we had to go and add not only a Liam Shaw entry into it, but we also had to account for the USS Constance, which was the ship which he'd served on and kind of have that make sense, which wasn't too bad. We had 40 ships to play with, so we could just swap one out, swap that in.
Right,
but
right.
yeah, and to be perfectly honest, it worked in our favor because it was such a great moment, and it built the excitement for Wolf 359 just as we were about to drop the book. And I've since had the opportunity to speak to Todd Stashwick and share the book with him so he can see it. And he was really supportive.
We got you in there. We got you in there, Todd.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Showed him. Say, it's you. We just kind of build off of that. And I'll give the credit to the Liam Shaw interview in the book. All credit to that to Eric, my co-writer, because he wrote that pretty much the day after the episode dropped. The episode dropped, and he went off and he wrote that, and he pulled it from a lot of his experiences as well, because he's active service U.S. military. He served, and he was pulling on the experiences of being in those sort of environments and witnessing that sort of stuff. And he produced one of the most powerful interviews in the book, in my opinion.
Well, so you just began this toward the end of the pandemic?
Yeah, we pretty much started at the end of 2021, although the kind of bones of it had been kind of floating around in my head for a while. I would sometimes just try and...
Okay.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit. I'd try and list, the ships that are full 359 and to try and make sense of it. But yeah, it's... end of 2021 is kind of like when we really sat down and said, right, we're going to do this.
Because I was aware first just from watching your Twitter account, the social, and that's when everything launched that had Wolf 359 attached to it.
Yeah, well, we officially launched it in March of last year, and a lot of that was just because of Picard coming along, and we could sense that there was. We wanted to get a bit of a steam rolling before we actually dropped the book proper, just build up a bit of a following. We weren't expecting anything like the response we've had to it, which has been fantastic, but we wanted to kind of. If I'm perfectly honest, we kind of wanted to just kind of ease people into the idea we were doing this book because, Star Trek fans, I love Star Trek fans. As you can see, I'm a huge Starship nerd, but we made some choices with some of the ships at Wolf 359, which might have proven to be contentious. So we wanted to just kind of let them warm up to this idea that we were going to include certain ships, which they might not have been expecting. And also the contentious point of which of the ships from the 39 survived. So, that was always going to be a bit of a contentious point as well. So we want to just kind of, ease people into that.
So you decided to do this. How did you divide up well, let's talk a little bit. Is this, and I don't know if it was a source of inspiration at all, but I think of right off the bat now that I know, because when I first saw this, I thought it was purely going to be basically a tech manual for Wolf 359. I didn't know you would have so much narrative to it. I thought it was just going to be fun facts, graphics, and all of that. And it wasn't until I saw you we met at Vegas this last year.
Oh yeah, Vegas, baby. But Larry,
it wasn't until then that I realized you had a narrative story, that connected it more than just tech manual pages.
Well, it's because for me, that was the most interesting part of the story. It was the personal stories. Yes. The thing is, Star Trek, we love Star Trek. We love following the adventures of the USS Enterprise. But the Enterprise is just one ship out of all the ships in Starfleet. And every one of those 39 ships was at Wolf 359, had its own stories, had its own crew, had its own history. And we wanted to kind of explore it. There's that moment when the Enterprise is passing through the debris field at Wolf 359 and Shelby's there and she starts listing off names, the Tolstoy, the Chekhov, the Melbourne, and the Kyushu. And each of those ships has a legacy of its own. Each of those ships has a story to be told. And, we really wanted to kind of explore that and kind of build upon that. But also, this entire project really was squaring the circle of how do you go from losing 40 starships at Wolf 359 being a massive blow to the Federation, to Deep Space Nine, where you have fleets of hundreds of starships being thrown at the Cardassians of the Jem'Hadar. And it's just, another Tuesday. Just throw in another 6 galaxy classes, it's fine. How do you get from there to there? And it was just kind of exploring what happens in a realistic sense, not just, we just started using CGI so it was easier to animate the models. It was in universe. How do you... Absolutely. It's entirely... Yeah. You have to go for mothball yards.
Well, one of the things would be, where do you put I'm sorry, I've slept this week, or I haven't slept this week. It's 40, it's 39. What was it? Give us the
There are 40 ships. Okay. There are 40 starships which are sent to Wolf 359 to intercept the Borg, and one of those ships survives. One of those 40 ships survives in a sense that it's put back into service, and Starfleet basically decides to say that ship survives because it's about the narrative. If you lose 40 starships in any battle, that's a disaster, you know. But if you lost 39 starships and one ship survived, well, that's a different story. You've completely changed the narrative. So we were wondering, what does Starfleet and the Federation do in the wake of that sort of thing? You change the narrative. You make one of those ships survive so that it is the hero. You know, it's a Dunkirk moment, effectively. You know,
Right.
It's still a retreat, it's still a defeat, but you're pulling a victory out of it of a sort. So that's kind of what came around about. And that also lets us explain why other ships might show up later on, but the official survival was well, it was the USS Hood. The book's been out for a while now. That's the ship that's our designated survivor, was the Hood.
The designated survivor.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of those, especially in some of the Voyager stories, we kept hearing about, you know, survivor off the ship. If the ship didn't, at least the survivor did, or whatever.
Well, okay, so with Voyager, I can explain the two big ones on Voyager. Everyone always points to the USS Endeavour as being a ship which survives because in, I think, Unity, Janeway is reading through the logs of captains who've encountered the Borg previously, and she quotes a Captain Amazov off of the USS Endeavour. And in the Star Trek Encyclopedia as well, Mike Okuda references that the Endeavour may have been one of the ships which survived at World 359. But it doesn't say it's fought at World 359. There's just a log entry from someone who has dealt with the Borg, and this reference to the Endeavour. So we actually have the Endeavour and Captain Amazov in our narrative, but we have him as part of the force which first shows up at World 359 in the aftermath. You know, is there to witness and clean up and to try and find survivors. And that's what prompts him to say, you know, the Borg are as close to evil as I can possibly imagine.
This is what I call texture, not trivia. This is what I call, we get our panties in a wad about what you just talked about. How did he? Yeah. And it's like, you can have it both ways, guys. We can, you know, it's the not what it seems at first, or it's the detail that goes against the grain, but just saying, well, he was there surveying the aftermath, but he wasn't in the, no, that's a lovely, yeah.
Well, for me, it had a lot more emotional resonance of having him show up in the aftermath of World 359, because the narrative we have is the bulk of Starfleet is actually kept behind in Earth. And the idea is once the Borg arrives, they will try and rush the Borg cube with as much as they have and destroy it there if they can do. World 359 is very much we're going to try and stop the Borg there if we can do. We have okay, I'm going to say this now. If you haven't read the book, I'm going to just spoil what we present in the book. The broad strokes are the same as what you already know. Okay, the Borg show up, kill a lot of people, get to Earth. First contact happens later on. But our narrative, the reason why they only send 40 starships to World 359 is they have a plan. The plan is to try and destroy the World 359 star, because they happen to know a Elorian scientist who happens to be developing a probe, and they think, if we can stop the Borg in this system and destroy the star, we might stop the Borg here. World 359 is an uninhabited system. You know, no one goes there. It's an absolute backwater. So their plan is, we trick the Borg to come to 359, we destroy the star, no more Borg, problem solved. The probe doesn't work though. You know, it's still an immature technology. It's not all there. And so then the fleet attacks, trying to stop the Borg, because, you know, what else are you going to do? And it fails, and then the and so the rest of the fleet is in Earth, and we have an interview with Amazov who talks about how him and his crew were ready to die. They were waiting for that moment. They'd seen what happens at World 359. They're there, they're ready, they're waiting for the moment, and then all of a sudden the Borg ship just explodes. The Enterprise literally Deus Ex Machina.
Thank you, Data. Thank you, Picard. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Data, Picard, Crusher, Troy, and O'Brien. Yeah. And you've got all that build up, and all of a sudden it's gone, and then you have a huge amount of frustration. You know, you were you'd ready your mind and body to do this, and it doesn't happen. And then you're sent to go and clean up World 359 in the aftermath. And they turn up there, and it's just
a whipsaw.
Yeah, it's an absolute. It's a horrible scene. It's a massacre. You know, there are, because the thing about ships in World 359 is when they're blown up, they don't stop. You know, they're still moving on whatever course they were traveling when the Borg destroyed them. So the first thing they have to do is go and tractor all the ships somewhere so they can go on the ships and start trying to look for survivors. It's a unpleasant process, and, you know, we have Amazon kind of express this over the course of the book. And one of the little kind of Easter eggs that you can pick out if you listen to the audio in Star Trek First Contact is the Endeavor's one of the ships that's destroyed there. So I have built a narrative that Amazov does get his chance to go and face the Borg and actually kind of have his chance to, if his chest was a cannon, he would have blasted his heart upon the beast. You know, he has his Ahab moment and he's killed there. And I think that's a much more entertaining narrative, if you will, than just he was there and he survived all 359. So we kind of weave that throughout there. And that also feeds into why we made Hood the surviving ship. The USS Hood is Hood is a special ship in Star Trek. It's the first ship you encounter in the Next Generation besides Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
It's where Riker and Geordi learned their trade under Captain DeSoto. We meet Captain DeSoto, and I mean, he's the best boss I ever had. Little shout out to Generation Trek there, but you know, it's he's such a charming and a great character. And then it shows up in the Dominion War. It shows up in Lower Decks. You know, the Hood is a ship just kind of been there through modern Trek, and we were like, yeah, Hood could have been one of the ships that was there, and Hood was the ship which survived because we were more engaged in that story and in the story of Captain DeSoto and what happened to him.
We have engaged with the Hood. Yeah. I where did you come up with the context? People had debated for in the baby days, early, mid Next Generation, before the spinoffs, before people got into the scope of things, exactly what that 40 ships represented. Now you're talking about ships that were held in reserve that Amazov and the Endeavor was part of. You know, the old trope about Enterprise being the movie plots and things, and you're the only ship in the quadrant, so go Voyager, go whatever. But now we're past that, and a lot of the discussion after Wolf 359, when we got into the Dominion War, when we got into some of the other even movies, like how fast did they rebuild the ship, even repercussions into 20 years later with the Romulan supernova on the way now, the way it's finally settled down, being retconned, and the Romulan would-be evacuation and all of that. And even down to like the cut and paste fleet with the
Inquiry class,
and then the plethora of ships we've got active, the Picard build, which is now we're up to 40 years later. 40 years later. No, 30 years.
2402, I think Picard season 3 was. So we are about 40 odd years.
Yeah. So just the fact of so it goes back to the core thing of how much of the fleet were the 40 ships. Do you get into that? Do you put that into context? Because a lot of it they couldn't get from the far-flung ends of the Federation into.
A lot of it's not actually about the number of ships. It's about how Starfleet wields those ships and how it views itself. I think one of the oldest discussions that you will have when it comes to Starfleet, and this will spawn endless debates on Twitter or the forums or what have you, is the question, is Starfleet a military? This is a question that just goes on forever. And
it's Lower Decks fodder for sure when they get meta on Lower Decks. Still.
Yeah, the answer is it is and it isn't, because Starfleet is its own thing. But what we look at is we ask the question of how does Starfleet, or how does the Federation wield Starfleet? And if you look at the Next Generation seasons 1 and 2 especially, you very rarely see more than one ship on screen. It's usually the Enterprise. And there's a great episode, Peak Performance, with Sinar Kilrami, our Zakdon friend. And he basically talks about how Starfleet is no longer equipped to face an enemy like the Borg. It doesn't know. So we basically look at it in this sense that Starfleet's been riding on the coattails of Khitomer for the best part of a century by the time we get to Best of Both Worlds. It's in a situation where it's never really had to face a serious threat like the Borg in the past 100 years. It has the ships, it has the resources.
Including the trouble with Cardassians on the border.
Well, even the trouble with the Cardassians at the borders, it's very much at the border. It's never going to risk Earth. It's never going to risk Andor or Vulcan. It's really just down to, it's a border dispute, effectively. And what you have is a situation where Starfleet's in a situation where it can just out-logistics anyone. It doesn't have to be better at fighting. It just has to be better at making sure the ship's available to fight those battles. Because it doesn't face anyone. The Romulans are, hiding away in the neutral zone. We explain what the Romulans are doing in our book, but that's besides the point. The Klingons are still largely a broken people. They haven't really recovered from Khitomer at that point. The Ferengi are viewed as a serious threat at the beginning of the Next Generation. And that's kind of where Starfleet is in that sort of a mindset. So it's really a question of how do you effectively wield it. When you get to Deep Space Nine, they talk about, it's the second fleet, the third fleet, the ninth fleet. They are thinking now as a naval formation and wielding it tactically. But that's just not something that they're doing in the next generation. And when Wolf 359 comes along, a large part of the first 3 chapters is Starfleet firstly going, we don't know what to do here, because we just Galaxy class ship is supposed to be better than anything out there, and we've already seen it's outmatched. We're not ready to face the Borg. And then when it comes along, it's like, okay, well, we have literally no idea what to do. And that's when the idea of maybe we blow up the star, that might slow them down. But even then, there's a whole discussion that if you do this, you are kicking off an arms race in the Alpha Quadrant. I mean, the Romulans hear about that, the Klingons, people are going to be very, very upset that you have detonated a star there. And there's a whole bit where we have interviews with Admiral Ross, who talks, he came up with the idea, and he talks about how, in one sense, I kind of didn't want it to work, because I knew if it did work, I'd have kicked off a massive arms race and I would have completely destabilized the entire quadrant.
This sounds like you're pulling all kinds of good old-fashioned Star Trek corollaries to. We just had Oppenheimer, this summer.
You know the Always Sunny meme where he's got the red string on the board. It's like that. It's all connected. I mean, you spoke earlier about the Romulan supernova. Okay, we actually tie the Romulan supernova into Wolf 359, because what we have is the Borg pass through Romulan space to get to Wolf 359. So a Romulan ship follows along its cloaks, it wants to see what's going to happen, and it turns up there and it witnesses the battle. And while it's there, it suddenly spots there's a runabout way over there. What was the runabout doing there? It goes and has a look, and it finds out all this information. The Federation were going to use a stellar bomb here. Well, if they're going to have stellar weapons, we should start having stellar weapons. So they start doing this research. When you get to Generations, the Romulans are the ones which had boarded Soran Station because they wanted more of that information. Later on, though, they finally succeed. They succeed in detonating the star. It was their own star. They didn't mean to do that. That was a mistake, but it's all connected.
Could have gone for the Romulan Wolf 359, but no, let's start at home. Right. That was okay. not quite the grand chess master they'd like to think themselves to be.
Well, the Tal Shiar. Tal Shiar going to Tal Shiar, aren't
they? Okay, there's so much so we've been at this for a good while now. Let me just take a time check here and see if how everybody's doing here in the chat, because I'm not usually used to doing this. Either I'm not chatting or I am chatting.
Okay.
So let me see. Zahir says, did I choose today because it's 1701? No, Zahir. This is the first day after my trial was done. This would have been Tuesday, except we went longer than we were supposed to.
Just to be clear, though, he was exonerated. All charges were dropped.
Yeah, right. Actually, it was a really good experience. I'd never been all the way through. I had been on 2 other juries where they settled, and I never got to go through the deliberation stage. And it wasn't an earth-shaking trial. It was for the people involved. But let's see. Okay, Don says, everybody at Trek Yard says hello. Yay. Happy 40th for the search for Spock. Oh, okay. What year? Search for Spock was a summer movie.
1984 to 2024. Yeah. Oh, that makes me feel old.
Oh, Don's throwing things. And happy 45th ish for motion picture. Okay. Everybody's chatting. Let's see. Okay. Oh, we got spam too. So that's we know we're doing good if we've got spam, as long as it's not too pornographic. Let's see. Linda says one thing I was going to say, Linda says she remembers Best of Both Worlds originally. She had nobody to talk about it with and was so bottled up. One thing that was cool was to hear you mention, and I'd forgotten this, that the first run in the UK, you had the gap too. You didn't just have, you had to live through that same thing that we did on the first run too.
Well, we actually had a bigger gap than we should have done, because between season 3 and 4, the rights changed from BBC, which is a free-to-air service, which everyone could have, to Sky. But fortunately, they were allowed to show Best of Both Worlds Part 2, and then nothing. We were then a year behind, even later on. So Yeah, it was tough being a Trek fan in the 90s in the UK.
But I'm sorry, that's so British to say, well, the contract changed, but we left them on a cliffhanger. So we'll show the cliffhanger conclusion and then start the
Exactly. Yeah. You know,
that was very.
it would have been
very,
riots otherwise.
Very yes. I just the Americans would they're like, what? There was a cliffhanger? What? I'm sorry, I work in corporate. I have no clue. And the 30th anniversary of Generations. Well, this summit, yes, like Christoph. Andy has 47 ship models behind him. Say something like, not that you need those to. He's doing a 47 nod there.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying hi. Everybody's yep. And it's a big anniversary year in the movies. This is a 5-0 big year for let's see. Come on, gang. Let's see. Oh, hey, JRRR, will I be able to come to SciFaCon? I think I'm able to come, but will SciFa have me back as a guest so soon? That's the question. Ask SciFaCon if I'm able to come. And that's
they
fine.
cleaned up a whole mess, didn't they? That was all sorted, you know.
That's right. Yes, we paid off the local judge, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's Louisiana. No, yeah, another Tuesday. Oh, Dave says, I am deeply intrigued by this backstory. I remember learning about the fate of the crew cut out of the Enterprise D during Best of Both Worlds. I love this concept. And Christoph is saying, speaking of Todd Stashwick, he'll be at FedCon in May with 16 other Trek guests and 6 or. Christoph, how long have you been doing marketing for Dirk? I didn't realize. Okay. That's awesome. Yes.
So I can tell you, just
yeah.
I don't have any stories about the ones which were cut out from the Enterprise, but we do account for the Unity episode of Voyager you were talking about there, and we kind of touched upon how do we get survivors from Wolf 359 all the way over in the Delta Quadrant. We also tie that into. Do you recall the game Star Trek Borg? Wonderful game.
I never played it, but I remember it very much being made. Yes.
You can get the video of that on YouTube. John Delancey's best performance as Q, bar none. Highly recommend you check it out. But anyway, during the Battle of Wolf 359, we know that some ships were boarded by the Borg and some ships were taken by the Borg. So we have the USS Roosevelt, the ship which Riley Fraser was on, was taken by the Borg, along with a couple of others, the Saleya and the Hood, in fact. And then those ships are whisked away towards the Delta Quadrant using some newfangled technology, which later finds its way into Federation hands when they get hold of the Hood. So that was, going back to that part of that challenge. It's connecting those dots from Voyager. We basically set ourselves a challenge that we couldn't ignore anything that's on screen. If it's referenced in the screen, we have to account for it.
Well, of course,
and that's where my beef with you, sir, comes up. Stellar cartography.
Okay.
If you're going to do this sort of thing, you need a good map. Because it's important to know where is Duet 4 in relation to the Paulson Nebula.
Well, I was going to ask you if it came in handy, but it sounds like maybe not.
No, it was really handy. And to be fair, my eye isn't so much pointed at you as it is at Emissary. Because, you have that. You have a rough sense of how long it takes to get from point A to point B. We worked out that at a high warp, it should take the Enterprise about 20 days to get from New Providence to Earth.
Okay. If you're going to get into warp speeds and distances, don't pin that on me.
I'm not pinning that on you.
This is a simulation of everybody from Mike on down, Jeff Mandel, everybody doing the best they could and then if you can't, then you just you lean into the Cochrane factor.
Trade winds. It's just trade winds. That was it.
That's yes, it's subspace trade winds, and that's what it is. Yeah.
But your maps were very, very useful for helping us just kind of plot out where this all came from, and it actually feeds into part of a narrative of how it comes through Romulan space and then shows up. But we had this all kind of plotted out, and we had this idea we were going to do a whole storyline about how they tried to evacuate Earth and to do all this. We had all this tied out. And then I'm watching Emissary, and Emissary shows up, and it says, Captain Picard was with the Borg for 6 days. And at that point, it's just like 6 days. So from the moment he's assimilated until he's off of the Enterprise, it's just 6 days. And that was just a proper... because 6 days isn't enough time to do any of the stuff we wanted to do in it. So we then had to scrap an entire chapter and rework it and come up with another way.
That wasn't on me. I didn't.
No, it wasn't on you, but it was your maps had given us a time frame we were working towards, and then Emissary threw that away for us.
Oh, okay. We gave
Yes,
you the map gave you too much that you had to pull. Okay.
Yes.
Well, if someone's gonna have a beef with me, I'd rather have it be a plump, juicy beef than a little shriveled up beef.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. If you want a decent beef, you'll have to get John on from Edge of Midnight. He would love to have some chats with you about that sort of stuff. But as you pointed out, the maps in Star Trek only make sense if you're looking at the Dominion War. Other than that, they don't make sense.
No, wait, say that again?
When we were at Vegas, you basically said the maps were designed for the Dominion War. They were designed to make accounts for that. They don't really make sense for anything else from that. So,
did I say that? Because the thing that I'm the proudest of with these, because the concept was kind of given to me.
Yeah,
the Dominion War made no sense to people. All the time they would talk about, we're on the verge of attacking the homeworlds, and it's like, well, if this is the layout. You've got a sector or two. And then there were two things. One, I kept going into the way the whole Pacific and Atlantic played out. I kind of merged them over. But one is, here's the Japanese. They're not bombing LA and San Francisco, but they're going to attack Attu and Kiska. Okay, so for whatever reason. And also, here's the the Atlantic here's the convoys. And that's the, an important. So they're talking about attacking a Klingon convoy off of whatever the Klingon. It's like, really? They're way over here on the border of the Empire, but not in a full force. So it was almost like But the one, and I'll just depart here for a second. The one big, you look at all the battles, all the things that are known, you overlap this. The one really floaty question mark that was totally undefined was Tyra 4, which is the battle they all go off to at the beginning. Then the cliff, then the summer gap hiatus, and then they come back limping home with beat down. And there's no detail about what that was. They tell you how many ships were lost, how many they took off, but it's like where it is, what the strategy, what the tactical importance was. And I basically said, okay, that's our, and at the same time, the Dominion have occupied Beta Z, but they've also it's one of the other it's either Beta Z or Belarus.
Oh, it's Beta Z.
I mean, not Beta. I mean, not Belarus or. Anyway, there's a close-in world.
Benzar.
Yes, Benzar. There's a close-in world that they do occupy. There's a lot of it's the same thing you were doing. There's a lot of weird things in how and people get all bent out of shape about when the Romulans come in after Pale Moonlight and they attack along. They say the Cardassian-Romulan border and that they're separated. It's like they've occupied this space, so now the border is over. Closer to the neutral zone. Don't go with the pre-war border. It's but there's ways out of that. But Tyra 4 was the battle that was unseen. It just did what it did dramatically. And I kind of made Tyra 4 like halfway across. Like if you're thinking of it as Tyra 4 was kind of like the Attu and Kiska of things. Or it was if the Nazis had gotten Iceland or something. It's kind of like we got partway over. And so there's a striking point there. And then you leapfrog over and you can get we just said it, Benzar.
Yeah, Benzar. Yeah. Well, you see, you're doing exactly the same thing then that we were doing.
The other thing is
same thing.
Go ahead.
Well, I said you're doing exactly the same thing as well. You're taking what's on screen because when they were writing this, they don't care. They're pulling names out of stuff and they're just going.
The little Doug Drexler maps made no sense. They didn't know they didn't want them to make sense. They wanted them to look pretty. And throw some bits up there, but they didn't ever want anybody to point to that because
you want it to exist in that ambiguity as well because it really gives you that freedom. And I mean, I was very aware going into this that one of the reasons why Wolf 359 is so appealing is because we so know little about it. We know 40 starships showed into it, but we never knew anything about it, and there was a real risk. Well, exactly. There's a real risk. But there's a real risk that if you don't live up to expectations, I mean. A real life example for me is I'm a huge fan of Alien, the Alien franchise. Prometheus does not live up to the question of what is the space jockey. It just doesn't deliver on that. And there was a real worry going into this that we wouldn't pay that off. And I'm very gratified that people who have read the book have come back and said, no, actually it enhances and adds to it without taking away from that mystique. If you're going to occupy the space, you want to make it a worthwhile endeavor and not just cheap out on it basically. And I'm very happy that we were able to kind of do that, because we've still left some things kind of as a mystery. We don't have accounts from every ship that was at Wolf 359. We don't have interviews with people at every one. We just give you enough to kind of follow through it and kind of get a very broad stroke of what it is. But it worked for that purposes.
that technique of the here's the log entry or here's the interview is also reminds me a lot of the old classic spaceflight chronology book, which was dead on arrival because they didn't follow any, and it's been a stub over the years. Everything that everything it introduced never went anywhere, didn't really fit into what was emerging. It was very pretty, and it has Rick Sternbach rocket paintings in it, ship paintings in it. But that thing about, and I thought they were way too melodramatic, but that thing of all the major, they had captains and logs and also civilian accounts and all this. What really, I was going to say this earlier, what your book, when I really got the sense of what it was, that it wasn't just a goober tech geek's dream of a factoid, but it was a narrative.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you took any inspiration at all or whatever. Was Dave Goodman's 150 years, first 150 of the Federation book?
It was something I had read before.
The weaving of plot points with, it's like 1/4 plot points known and 3/4 narrative that, fills the gaps.
No, I mean, honestly, the biggest inspiration in terms of writing the book was World War Z by Max Brooks, which was in of itself taken from The Good War by Studs Terkel. And in both of those instances, what they're doing is they are taking these disparate interviews, but they're telling you a single story by interviewing different people at different points along that time frame. So that's kind of what we did. I mean, the book starts. So the book is framed. Each chapter kind of begins with an interview, not so much an interview, with the author of the book talking about his experience as they are on the USS Hood, which is being taken to the Wolf 359 Memorial to be decommissioned. And it's kind of his reflections on each of us as we're going along. But the first interview in the book,
it's finally going away. It's finally,
Well, it's if you look, I remember when the USS Missouri was turned into a museum ship.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure.
Can a big shout out there to Jaime Dickian, who did all of the page designs and graphics in there and all those timelines. I drove him absolutely insane with all of the LCARS work, but they did Starfleet LCARS, Klingon LCARS, Vulcan LCARS, Romulan LCARS, some of this effectively from scratch, and to try and make it. If you turn to a random page, there's like little Easter eggs even in the LCARS where it tells you how far in the book you are, because our view was this would be something you'd read on a Star Trek pad. So I absolutely kind of knocked it out of the park with that. I mean, I think it's the best looking Star Trek book that's been made. I'm a little biased, but it's a damn looking Star Trek book.
It's very crisp and clean and perfect in that way.
But no, the book actually starts, like the first proper interview is with Guinan, and it's Guinan talking about her experiences of being an Elorian refugee and what happened when they dealt with the Borg the first time. And it's kind of relating that story. We have interviews, that kind of before the before J25 and everything. We have interviews with Data talking about what was it like encountering the Borg for the very first time there. There are interviews with Kilrami from Peak Performance talking about the state of Starfleet and the Federation at the time of J25 and why, in his opinion, Starfleet just wasn't up to the task of doing anything. We have transcripts of meetings of the Admiralty where you have like the Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet and like all the admirals sit around, and they're talking about, okay, well, we'll have to make sure we're ready for when second contact comes along, so that we have their ambassadors already. It's just kind of, they're not taking it seriously because it's Alien of the Week, it's the new monster that's coming along, but it's that building that sense of dread as it goes along to until all of a sudden they're at your door, and then it's like, okay.
They had no idea. What? So we have the battle. Then what? What are your like aftermath? I don't want to give it away because let me stop here. How do people get a hold of it? It's downloadable.
Okay, look, the book is entirely free to read. This is a fan work. This is not in any way official yet, but it is a unofficial project. But you can get it for free if you go to wolf359project.com. You can download the PDF there, and if I do say so myself, it is a beautiful PDF. If I get my pad to work, come on. Yes, you'll see. You know, all this beautiful work there. Many people did stuff on here. You can download this absolutely free from there. It's also on Archive of Our Own, so AO3. If you go there, you can just search for "We Have Engaged for Borg," and it should pop up on that. And from there, you can download it to your Kindle as well, because PDFs and Kindles don't necessarily play too nicely. But you can download it onto your Kindle from there. I'm afraid we cannot offer physical copies. Paramount were very, very firm with that. We can't offer physical copies.
Well, let's talk about that. What's that? This is so awesome. There's 2 or 3 levels here. One of the things is, like you said, you were holding your breath, knowing Picard was going to lean back, or once you found out. Were there? Let me first of all, were there any other hiccups along the way? You kind of assimilated the whole Liam Shaw and his ship.
I mean, no, Liam Shaw, what not hiccups, but what I think was really fascinating is all of a sudden last year, out of nowhere, there were 3 big Wolf 359 projects which came along. There was us with our book. There's also a supremely talented CG artist on YouTube called JTVFX. I highly recommend you go and check out their page. And they have done an amazing 3D representation of the battle as if it was filmed in the 90s using the techniques available at the time. It is probably the most accurate representation of what the battle would have looked like if they'd have had the budget in 1992 to actually run a battle. It's amazing.
Just do it.
Yeah. It's just they just do it all. Their take on the battle is very different to what ours is, but that came along. And then of course there was Picard season 3, where all of a sudden Wolf 359 was back at the forefront. So
and the whole idea of tracking ships, and you've got Dave Blass and all the guys like trying to, even after the fact, retconning things and trying to keep the ship nerds and the tech heads happy. But you've got the Fleet Museum celebrating ships. You've got the the Section 31 Museum where that even comes into play, and the whole idea of history and preservation. And now we're tracking things across decades of Star Trek lore and Star Trek canon. Yeah, that whole world blew up. So I can totally see you sitting on pins and needles. But basically, what I think you're saying is you got through Picard season 3 in your selfish view of the thing. Not being blown out of the water. Nothing.
Oh no. We got to the end of Picard season 3. So we actually, the book is written. It is set in 2396, which is about 3 years before Picard season 1. But we also have a coda, which is an interview with Jean-Luc Picard. It's the only interview he gives in the book, and that is set after the event of Picard season 1. So we don't actually reference anything in Picard season 2 or season 3 in the book, because we take the view that the author wrote the book in 2396 when the Hood was decommissioned, which would be 30 years post Wolf 359. And then Picard read the book, and after his experiences with Hugh and the Borg Reclamation Project in Picard season 1, reached out to the author and said, I will finally give you an interview so I can have some closure on this. And he gives an interview, and then that's the end of the book. So that kind of worked out nicely for us. It also means we didn't have to deal with any of the stuff in Picard season 3.
Well, nice. Is there anything that you would like to tweak now, or is it still good for you? Do you have closure with
Wolf 359? I have closure. I'm very happy with Wolf 359 story that we've done. We might go and do a supplemental book like the Ships of Wolf 359, where we'll do a little kind of animation. There's a really talented artist called Pundus who does a lot of stuff. He did some stuff for Picard season 3 and Star Trek Online, and we might do a book with them, which is just kind of like each of the ships. We'll do a little render and a little brief backstory, a little bit of history to that ship. But that would probably be it for 359. But there are other kind of history projects that me and my co-authors are working on. I mentioned John previously, and what he's currently working on is a book series called The Edge of Midnight. And The Edge of Midnight is a historical account of the Federation Klingon War. So everything from Discovery through the original series all the way up to Khitomer. One day he'll get to Khitomer. He'll get there when he gets there. But he's currently working through that. And much like we did with 359, it is trying to thread a singular narrative so that what we see in Discovery and then what we see in the original series and then what we see in the Star Trek movies makes sense. And he's approaching that as if he is a historian going back and writing a history book from the mid 2330s, I think is the time frame. And Haim Ardikian, the page designer, is working on a book series called the Oniaka Free Project, and that is a story about Hugh and the ex-Borgs, the ex-Bees on Oniaka Free that you see in Descent, and then effectively telling the story about how they gain independence and how they become a fully formed entity of themselves, and it's all about identity and coming to terms with yourself and dealing with traumas from your past and building a new world and light. And both of them were really instrumental in kind of shaping this work and fleshing it out. And my co-author, Eric, he has a book series called New Horizons, which is set after the Dominion War, but before Nemesis. And it's about the reconstruction of Cardassia. And it's kind of like that post-war, what is the Federation doing to kind of deal with the state of the galaxy that exists there, and is kind of following a ship, dealing with that, and those are either ongoing or finished and out there. So there's plenty. This is really a golden time for kind of fan works to be out there. I hesitate to use the term fan fiction, not because I don't think it's deriding anyone who's done that stuff.
Yeah,
but there's a stigma attached to it when someone says fan fiction, but people instantly just kind of assume that it's just it's not valid. It's entirely valid. It's absolutely valid. Headcanon, as you said,
when I hear fan fiction, I think of like shippers. I think of people that want to lean into the relationship, and that's totally fine. I mean, going back to the Spock and Vulcan and everything, Sarek and Amanda days that saved Star Trek in the first place. But and then everything like that, and it's like I said, when I first heard about this, I was thinking more on the tech geek side and the historical tech geek side that I am. But then we also there are bits and pieces that we'd pull. One of the first things I did was try to. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, that impulse. Which, to me, I can totally see the difference between that world and like Dave did with the 150s, the 150th years of the Federation book. And then just the pure. It's just a novel using the characters, and sometimes they use a big background event or whatever, and they're tying threads together. Usually it feels like they're tying smaller threads, like people's lives and events and things, the gaps that need to be filled, but on a much smaller scale. And these are like grand histories and grand whatevers. And
I mean, I would go so far as to say that as much as we all love Picard season 3, Picard season 3 is no less fan work than what we had done. The people making that show were fans of the Next Generation. They were very much fans and wanted to tell a story pulling on those threads that they enjoyed from when they were younger, sort of thing. And that is what Picard season 3 is there. So it really is. We're doing the same thing. The only difference is Paramount hasn't said ours is official.
Well, now hold on. So to get back what you said, when I was like, what I was trying to say there was when I hear fan fiction, I'm thinking the scope and the thing. You seem to say it was more like what's the respect it's given, or what's the yeah. And to say that when you call this fan fiction, you're not trying to no, it's good. Look how much professionally printed Star Trek, like the adjacent works, started off as self-published. I did. Mine was self-published. All the books of the 70s were self-published to begin with, that before they were picked up and made official. And then we had a glory time when people were, like when the Akutas got to do things, they were on the show, so they were official to start with, or whatever. But they were backstage manuals before they made them.
But the great thing about fan works, about all fan works, and this is someone just said in this in chat, it's by fans for the fans. We can put a lot more love and attention into it than you can do when you're doing something to a deadline. When you're writing a proper novel to be printed, you have a deadline. They need this novel to hit a deadline because it's got to go out in the third quarter. Whereas, we could spend 2 years writing it to get it done there. And so that's what it is. And so what I was saying is
to sacrifice that time in advance. You don't care that you're not getting paid for it as you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. And
it's not a good business model, but that's what a fan does.
No, it's a terrible business model. And it's something that I do lament a little bit is that when I was younger growing up, there were avenues available for people to submit their fan works to have them made official or to be kind of brought into the canon. You used to be able to submit fan works to the publishers or to Star Trek. I mean, Ron Moore kind of got his start by just kind of, pitching a script, in there. And
You had the
Yeah.
fan submission officially for canon, but I didn't know if you were also talking about like when Pocket had the Strange New World short story contest.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that
both.
was their
Yeah,
method to legitimize fan work and make it legal and broad
yeah,
based.
and unfortunately, those avenues are gone now. They just don't exist anymore, and that's kind of a real shame. And that's kind of what led to us kind of butting heads a little bit with Paramount. You know, we never
I wanted to
wanted.
ask you about that. What's been the
Yeah,
reception? Because it is so good. And I saw a couple of physical copies, but it is
but
so good. Sometimes you can be too good as a fan. Yes.
doesn't exist. The thing is, you know, we did a small run, you know, because I
Doesn't
wanted
exist. I'm putting mine away
a
right
physical.
now. Okay.
I wanted a physical copy for myself, and people who
Right.
contributed, they gave us those. But
Right.
Paramount then reached out to us and said, no, naughty, can't do that. And so yeah, we can't offer physical copies, and it's a real shame that there's just no avenues for us to be able to do that.
What about? I mean, you would not be the first time that someone did something. I'm looking at me. I'm looking at Dan Madsen. Lots of people. The fan work was so well received that it had to stop, but then they immediately turn around and try to bring them in the fold to do something. Have you had any kind of?
We'd love to, but honestly, no one has, and I don't think they will do. And I think that's just down to the nature of how business is done these days, shall we say. It's very much a case of, and again, I'm not up with it, but my understanding is, in far as the licenses goes, I believe Paramount is selling off Simon and Sushla, who have the license to do fiction works, and this might come under Titan because it's a non-fiction work set in a fictional universe. It all becomes very complicated. But when we spoke,
I can also see where if we've circled back to, like you said, 5 years ago, you didn't think, the last thing you thought was this would get involved in what's on screen now. And I can see where maybe someone who's aware of what's the landscape is thinking, we do this, we're tying the hands of someone who might want to revisit this for some reason dramatically on screen. And they don't want to tie the hands of anybody, you know.
I don't think it's that at all, because they've always been very clear that the stuff in the books is the stuff in the books, and the stuff on the screen is the stuff on the screen. And even then, no, I get that. But I think what it basically just boils down to is, what was explained to us was the reason they don't have that anymore is because the weight of submissions that would not be, in their words, up to standard was so great, they didn't want to hire someone or have someone who would have to read through that work to then reject it all. They just don't view it as a worthwhile one. It's kind of even to the point now where, like the official Star Trek novels, they have about 3 or 4 authors who they work with, and they only work with those authors because they know they will get what they want each time. And that's just kind of the way they are set up and structured to do it. And it's a shame that there isn't a way to kind of offer physical copies or to put it out into the hands of people who want it. But like I said, we always intended it to be kind of viewed on a pad, because it's meant to be a book written in the 24th century to read on your little grey pad. You want to be Jean-Luc Picard on Risa, and you just want to sit alone and read my book.
About the most dramatic point in my life. Oh, well, for him anyway.
Yes.
So as a corollary, though, to what officially Paramount has had to say, have you heard back from any of the creatives of any era of any of the series? Yeah.
Fortunately, we were able to, in Vegas, we were able to go out and actually, speak to some of the people there. Todd Stashwick, hugely supportive, and was fantastic. When we went up and saw Todd, he instantly took us and dragged us over to go and meet Terry Matalas, and just said, "These are the guys that wrote the 359 book there," which was great. We went. We have interviews with people like Jake Sisko has interviews in the book. So we took the opportunity to go and meet with Sir Lofton while he was there, and we had a chat with him, which was fantastic. Hi is a huge fan of Hugh. So John Delarco being there, we kind of took Hi and frog marched him in front of Hugh, so they could meet, which was a lot of fun for us. We enjoyed that.
Sure.
But yeah, they were all fantastic, and
because here's what happens. Here's what happens when this is why I ask you that.
Yeah.
And it comes up, and hey everybody, I just wrote a piece for Daily Star Trek News about this. Yeah. If something about the franchise is not to your liking, if you don't like a path where the overall flow seems to be going or even stumbling, or something in particular has some detail, you can be upset about it, or you can do something constructive about it. But basically, the way human nature is and the way capitalism is, between those two ebbs and flows, the pendulum will eventually swing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting at here is, you're talking about the minute you say the current thinking at the corporate level is, no, we can't do this, we're not interested, whatever. Let 5 or 10 years go by, either for that to change with a different administration or mood, or all the little seeds you plant, all the years that Star Trek, the Berman era, when it was so hard to get writers in, but you started having the Ron Moores and the Renee Echevarrias and the Brian Fullers, who were the fanboys, who were among the big swath of fans. A few of those fans are going to be designers and writers. Mm-hmm. And eventually they gravitate toward the thing they want to do. So what we're just talking about here with the director of this now just announced Trek movie, who's a huge Trek fan. Toby Haynes, I think. But what started happening was, by the time we got to DS9 and Voyager, and especially Enterprise, the Mike Sussmans and the Manny Kotos running things had played the online. They're pulling little bits and pieces from some of that non-canon work in, and it's accelerated. Terry's doing that with Picard. All I'm saying here is, all the little seeds you're planting here, you don't know in 5 or 10 or 15 years, if not as a body of work, a lot of nods are going to be taken. A lot of influencers are going to pull up things that they couldn't help but enjoy from this. You can't help it. It's too thick. It's too massive. It's too well done.
Well, I was,
for those
it's good defensive weapon.
Decision makers and gatekeepers are going to pull from that, whether they even remember. I'm sure they'll remember, but whether they're going to be affected by it.
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest,
that's any consolation.
But for us, the most gratifying. Well, we wanted to tell our story, which we had done, and to be perfectly honest, if we'd written the book and the only people who read it were, our friends and family, and they had really enjoyed it, we'd have been kind of satisfied with this. For me, this was they always say you have one novel in you. Well, I have written my novel, and I had done that. That was great. But really, what for me was the most gratifying part was that people who have then gone off to read the book and have reached out to us and told us how much it's affected them and how much they've really enjoyed it. I've had numerous people tell me that they have been brought to tears by bits in the book, just from what's writing there. And I'm pretty sure that's not from the terrible grammar that's in there, because it was proofread many times, but just some of the emotional impacts from some of the stories in there. And with Eric's experience, as I said, he is current serving US military. He'd served in Afghanistan and what have you. And he'd had experiences of working with people who had been wounded and come back as veterans and had seen their experience. And he was able to translate some of that into the book, in the sense that some of the people which came back from Wolf 359, we have a line in there, some of the people who came back from Wolf 359 are never the same again. Jean-Luc Picard is still the captain of the Federation flagship. That's not fair. That's a sentiment that he had experienced and seen, and being able to help get some of that out there, and that catharsis there was gratifying there. So whether or not it ever becomes officially canon or not, I'm not all that fussed about. Canon is a very I think we are far too obsessed with canon these days.
On screen. Canon is just what's on screen eventually. That's all it is. Canon for me, somebody writes it down. That's all it is. And then figures out if there's
for me, it's not about canon. It's about telling compelling stories. It's about telling a story that, speaks to you. And if you've read through that story and your big takeaway from the story is, well, that's not right because that starship wasn't in service at that date, well, you've kind of missed the point of the story we're telling there,
Well, if the overwhelming worth of the project is good and the most you can pull out, your critique is that ship was not supposed to be in service that day. Now you're back to texture, not trivia, and you go and you figure out, well, what do we not know? Or yes, it was. Now, what do we not know? How do we bridge this? And you wind up with something stronger.
I would like to think that if you've seen the size of this book, I come with receipts. If there's a ship present in World 359, I've explained why it was there.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's because my old philosophy, from day one, as a first generation, not 60s, but as a 70s, 80s rerun kid, and who got into the world building, and you come across all kinds of, there's all kinds of like, what was you spa? How did what? It's like, no, they said it. It's on camera. It's got to be in there somehow. It doesn't make things wrong. And things evolved. They started here, but now we do this. And the look of the tech in the 60s versus the 80s. I'm so sick of everybody talking about, well, it had to be for a 2017 or a 2020 audience.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you do what Tribulations did with the original models and aesthetic in the 90s. It was for a 1996 audience. Anyway, there's always ways to assimilate all of this, whether it's conceptual or visual. Yeah. And that's, to me, the strength of Star Trek. And that's what makes it different than any other wonderful, futuristic, aspirational, dramatic, well-written, or well-cast franchise. The fact that Star Trek, that's what makes Star Trek different than any of the others. And that's why I think it's cool. And that's why departing from that does not mean you're anal and dirt and into the wrong thing. It just means that I don't think you quite that person doesn't quite grasp what Star Trek is, what makes it different than the other franchises. Yeah. Anyway, to say that, it is a triumph, and I'm so glad that I found out that it was more than just a collection of factoids that are wonderful and gap filled and all of that, but the fact that you've got the narrative and the fact that you use a device like just an interview, but it's dramatically turned to where it's a fictional oral history, which is what you call it, right? It's the oral history.
We call it the oral history. I'll tell you the secret to why it's framed like that. I didn't think I could actually write a full novel, but I thought I could probably write a lot of very short novels. So that's what it was.
All of these.
Yeah,
together,
I could do a couple of thousand words per interview and then just kind of stitch them together, and that kind of worked pretty well.
What's the, without giving the spoiler, what's the end? How do you get out of it? What's the end game?
Look, I can't really spoil the story because, like I said, yeah. Well, so again, if you've seen Star Trek, you know what happens. They destroy the Borg in Earth's orbit. After Wolf 359 takes place in the very middle of the book. Afterwards, we then have the run up to Earth and Sector 001 when the Borg is destroyed there. And it's also talking about what's it like on
the movie.
Sorry?
Yeah. I said First Contact, the movie.
Well, no, we get to that. But we have Sector 0, like when the Borg arrives in the Sol system.
Right. Still there. Yes.
Yeah. Still there. Like we have an interview with Dr. Louis Zimmerman on Jupiter Station, who is very caught up in his work on holotechnology when the Borg cube goes by, and he's very, very annoyed. But it basically, we have that. We have the interview with Captain Amazov on the Endeavour talking about, that moment. We have interviews with the president's chief of staff, who is really, really not happy about the way things are going because the president was told to leave because it was all going to go to pot, and then it doesn't go to pot, and the president's kind of out of place. After that, we have the section called Recovery, and that is dealing with cleaning up Wolf 359. It is going there.
That's what I mean, right.
We talk about what happened to the Klingon fleet, because if you recall in the episode, Hansen says he's reached out to the Klingons who are sending a fleet. Why were they late? We talk about when the Klingons show up, what happens there, and their insights into to what this means to them. And we have that. Then we have interviews with like Admiral Ross and the captain of the USS Thunderchild from Sector 001. We have interviews with Brunt, FCA, and Kelly and Massette to show how the impact of Wolf 359 altered the Alpha Quadrant in terms of, if you don't have Wolf 359...
What was the last name you said? Gul Massette?
Massette. Yes, Gul Massette.
The Cardassian. Yeah, okay.
The Cardassian, yes. Cousin of Gul Dukat. But we basically talking there about how, what's the Cardassian perspective of the Federation in TNG? Their perspective is, we've been having these border wars, but we can't win. They are far too powerful. We need to suit for a peace. We can't do this. So we will leave Bajor, we'll set up this DMZ. Then you have Wolf 359, and all of a sudden, you can be beaten. And maybe they start pushing back. Maybe they're like, we don't want to give you back all these colonies along the DMZ. That kind of flares stuff up a little bit there. So we have interviews about how it affects the entire quadrant. How the Dominion War, you do not win the Dominion War without suffering through Wolf 359, because you're just not thinking tactically. We interview We have an interview that was written by Claude Berube, who was the director of the US Naval Academy Museum, talking about ship design and why they designed the Defiant from the lessons they learned at Wolf 359, and talking about how, big nacelles on struts are a weak point. You can slice through those. So if you compact everything down and, you give it lots of guns, we have those sort of interviews there. And that's kind of a through line. And we kind of take that through to, the end of the story. And then it ends with the hood delivered to the Wolf 359 Memorial Station, which is like the Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor, where the wrecks from Wolf 359 still sit. And, you can go and visit the wrecks, and there's a memorial wall, and they reflect on that moment there. They kind of share a quiet moment, and then they leave. And then we have our postscript, which is the interview with Jean-Luc Picard, who for the first time comes to terms with the fact that he is, in fact, an ex-Borg. He is an ex-B who comes to terms with the fact that the Borg are not monsters. They're victims. No drone chooses to become a drone. They are all victims as well. And it kind of has a little catharsis moment where he comes to terms with what he did at Wolf 359, but also with the Borg as a whole. And that's the end of the book. And then there's some appendices, which speaks to your technical stuff, which is a lot of fun. We have biographies of certain people and, tactical reports and stuff at the very end. That's a lot of fun.
Right. Okay. Well, I was starting a little thrown there when you said I have a beef with you about the maps. I was like, oh no, what no. I inherited the project. That wasn't, but no, I was glad to, because I was curious about that. So that's awesome.
No, you're fine. We call you the Supreme Excellency. You're a huge inspiration to us.
So what did I? So you were going through the projects they're working on, and yours was, what are you?
Oh, so what I'm working on next? I'm currently working. So we call ourselves Tranquility Press, which you can find on social media and stuff like that. We have a Discord. I don't know how Discord works because I'm an old man with a beard, but it's a thing which exists. Kids love it apparently. I'm currently working on a project where myself and John and another individual who I won't say right now because I don't know if he wants to be associated with me yet or not, but he's well known in the Trek community, we'll say. We're currently writing the official history of the Galaxy-class starships. The idea being that if you went to visit the Enterprise D at 8th and Prime, this is the book that you would buy in the gift shop afterwards. So it's So it's basically all of the history of USS Galaxy, USS Yamato, Enterprise, Odyssey, Columbia, Venture, Challenger. It's kind of a story of those, how they serve in the Dominion War, what happens to them after. Why don't we see any of them in Picard? We have to explore that. We have to understand, why are they not in Picard? So we're kind of early days on that, but that's something I'm currently working on.
We finally saw so many in the Dominion War at the end. Yeah, maybe.
But
let me dive back into the questions here. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was going to go back to where we got to before, everybody. Let's see. Yeah, JR24. Paramount really needs to do a Klingon series either with or without Worf. A lot.
He is in the chat.
Let's see. Where's Plushy Leonard in all of this? Sherry, Plushy McCoy. My postals are still here. Plushy McCoy is right back there in his throne. He's where he always is. He's good. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Rose. Monday, the 22nd, will be 59 years since The Cage completed filming. There we go. JR24, how far do you think we are from 3D printers into replicators? A ways, I think. I don't know about you. That was out of...
What do you mean by replicators? I mean, 3D printers are scary good now. I mean, it can't do... It's never going to be... Well, it will never be like instant, like tricorder, it suddenly appears. But I think we're maybe a decade away from... You could 3D print one of those in a matter of minutes.
It's completely revolutionary. Aside from everything here, just think of what it's done to revolutionize. And not that I lean into this, but the first thing that popped in my mind is planning for some of we're trying to evolve and grow space flight now on our level for the rest of the system. And if we're rapidly getting toward the expanse level, hopefully not politically, but at least technologically,
Yes.
3D printers are going to take, you just take a 3D printer along and you've completely revolutionized how much your thinking is about cargo and dead weight you have to take and all. I mean, I would, they're doing it on the space station now. They've got 3D. They're just, instead of worrying about a part that's broken, they're just replicating,
Let me shout out a really good book series. There's a book series. It's the Bobbyverse series by Dennis E. Taylor. Fantastic book series. Check it out. But they talk there about how you send out these probes and you have 3D printers there, which can then print anything up to and including another 3D printer and then another probe to send further out into space and everything. It's a really fascinating series. So check it out.
Do you know someone named
Hi? I know Hi. Hi is Hi Mardikian, the page designer from the book. So
there we go.
Hi.
There you go. Gave him a shout out, as you should. Yes.
Yes.
And there, thank you, Sherry. Sherry put the place up there somewhere in our discussion about it. There you go.
Right. Wolf359project.com.
Yeah. Oh, this is 1359. What is?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's not us.
Oh, sorry. You're right. I have no idea what that is. Here we go. Thank you, Christoph. Christoph has it here. Boom.
That's the one.
Okay. There we go.
It's there. It's free. Download it. Enjoy it.
Well, Narda, who's in Australia, she's in the outback. Narda says she'd love her. Narda, you can print your own paper and do double-sided, and you can go to the expense of you can go to there's nothing to stop you in this day and age. We're sitting here talking about,
replicators.
You could, replicate a book. That would be interesting, page by page. Sherry, you are very welcome. Oh, and look who's here. Mr. Thomas Marone is here, man.
Yes. Who very excitedly, STO is about to drop a task force operation where you can actually play through the Battle of Wolf 359. Very excited to see that. And he might have been someone I alluded to earlier in discussion about another project. So just leave it at that.
Or might not.
Might not.
We don't really know. Okay. But thank you, Thomas, for dropping by. Yes. Fan fiction is actually fan fact. Well, see, I used to, early on, like in the 80s, 90s, I would use the terms fan nonfiction and fan fiction. Fan fiction to me were the novels and narrative stories. But if you worked on the other side, that wasn't a story. If you were doing either in-universe manuals and encyclopedias and that kind of thing, or making of books were, but that was a TV making, that was a production.
Yeah.
Right. But the in-universe thing, I would call that fan nonfiction, like the tech manual, like the medical reference, and I remember running into, I'll just say what we used to say, mundanes, and they were like, what do you mean Star Trek nonfiction? It's all fiction. And I was like, no, I mean, it's like, sorry, I'm leaving you behind. You don't get it.
You just don't get it, man. You don't get it.
You don't get it. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Christoph. It's the 18th now over your side of the world. So yes, across the pond. So thank you. Okay.
You got 40 minutes here still. You still got 40 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you for staying. Oh, by the way, thank you for staying up late like this.
This
has been an unusual day.
It's been a weird day.
See. What are you saying here, Narda? The thing about canon is it's the stability of our universe. You can stretch the heck out of it, just don't break it. If you break it, our universe makes no sense whatsoever. There we go. Yeah. Hey, Dwight, I'm waving back at you too.
Can I give a quick shout out to Dwight? I'm assuming this is the same Dwight. Dwight is building upon your work with maps and has done an absolutely amazing map for the Edge of Midnight project. It's the level of detail in the maps that he's done is awe-inspiring and insane. Obsessive. You think I was obsessive with Wolf 359? The level of obsession Dwight has gone into on the maps is amazing.
Right. No, it's if you're not going to do it, then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
And every era and every ability, level, whatever. So SFC, where do we think Ethan Prime is in the galaxy? When you stop and realize that season 3 Picard took place over 1 week, talk about stretching, talk about space flight and speeds and factors and all that. The idea that they're bipping around known space, Alpha Quadrant, and into the Beta. And remember at the very first thing, Picard and Riker are having their drink, and he says, "Yeah, we're going to be at the what's it show in a week." I always call it wrong. Anyway, but it's like there's 10 episodes. Those 10 episodes happen over seven solar days, which is insane.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, the idea where 8th and Prime with the Fleet Museum is located is up.
Well, if you're interested in
control
8th and Prime, if you do a search for the US Naval Academy Museum, Claude Berreby, who contributed to the book, did a fantastic video talking about the Fleet Museum and because as a museum director, some of the challenges of setting up a museum such as that. And so I've just seen Glenn asked the typical joke we often get: we have engaged a board, but we haven't even set a date for the wedding. Wolf 359 takes place on January 1st at 8 p.m. I worked it out.
I have loved for years,
2367.
as long as the 1,000-year star dates were a year, and they went, and you know, it's like, well, if that's a calendar year, a Terran Gregorian calendar year, January, December. Why is it like, what a bummer that if you're still following Western customs, all the the cliffhangers all happen at the end of the year. They would restart for the next year. Did you notice that all the galactic crises happen over the holidays? It's just so sad. It's so annoying.
We used to have a joke here in the UK. We had a soap opera called EastEnders, and the joke was you never wanted to be around Albert Square over Christmas time because someone was going to die or be murdered, or a plane was going to crash, or just something terrible was going to happen.
So anyway, we're working on locating 8th and Prime. It's one of those. It's one of those things.
Dwight, get on it. Get it on a map.
Christian, yes. You're very welcome. This has been awesome. And we talked about doing this. We had to hold up a little bit till things sorted, but I'm glad we did. Yes. Memory Alpha and 8th and Prime are of some. Well, 8th and Prime is specifically dedicated to big artifacts, but Memory Alpha is like data and information and also some artifacts. But they've got the fleet. The Picard's digital museum is there.
It's a bit like the Smithsonian, I think. Memory Alpha is like the Smithsonian, and 8th and Prime is the Uvad Hazy Center part of it.
Well, or to me, it's more like 8th and Prime is the Smithsonian, and Memory Alpha is more like the Library of Congress.
Potato, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's information and stuff versus artifacts. Yeah, but 8th and Prime is specifically about ship artifacts, and there's other places where they have artifacts. Yeah. Sure. I thought Plushy Leonard had jury duty too. No, he just sat there. What is she? Oh, hi Marcus. I'm glad the Wolf 359 footage included Admiral Hansen's Galaxy class flagship that was in the Best of Both Worlds script.
Well, I think that's referring to the JTVFX video, which does include a Galaxy class ship. They have a ship which leaves its saucer behind, and it calls it the USS Auriga, as I believe. We have a Galaxy class ship that we call the USS Columbia, because I figure Enterprise and Columbia, you're going to follow that kind of naming convention, NX-01, NX-02, the shuttles and so forth.
Same with the NX-01s did. Right.
So the Galaxy class ship, which Hansen is on in our book, is the USS Columbia. In JTVFX's one, it's the USS Auriga.
Which is interesting. Hi, Sean. Can I ask you, Larry, about the sets for TNG's interface? Were they new sets or a redress? For TNG's interface.
Oh, the episode interface. That's the one when Geordie's mother shows up?
Is that what you mean? The sets for TNG's, were they new sets or a redress? You mean of her ship when they're doing the videos of her talking? When Madge Sinclair plays his mother? Is that one? No. You've got me, Sean. I need more. I was thinking interface as in Okudagram interfaces and consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. I'm not sure what we're talking about there, Sean. So, and off the top of my head, I'd need to stop and maybe look it up. Okay. Hey, Narda, I know it wouldn't be the same, but again, like Andy's saying, it's meant to be an actual PDF, which is like people talk about the 2-dimensional maps. Shouldn't this be 3-dimensional by that time?
Well, some of our interviews are actually meant to be seen on a holodeck, and we do actually have a safety warning. But if you're going to watch this on a holodeck, please ensure your safeties are engaged.
Talking about Dwight's work there, the maps. Yes. Because there's the whole third axis that no one ever stops to think of. The maps that are 2-dimensional are done we get into distances sometimes, and sometimes it's a fudge. It's like, well, let's put it way off the ecliptic so we can fudge that on a map it looks close, but in real life it's like, bottom of Everest, it's top of Everest, only on a galactic scale. I need to let you get to, let's see. I'm really looking for, guys, good question, so we can let the other side of the pond go to sleep.
I'm absolutely fine. I'm a night owl anyway.
Yeah, I wonder about this. If there's more than the one, all the good ones are there, but they're all the good ones if you ever had a TV subscription. Hero ship. Okay, Dwight thinks that it's a business fiscal year, not a mid-year to mid-year. I don't know, Dwight.
I mean, you can make the case, Dwight,
about the holidays. Well, I'm sorry, I cut you off there, Eddie.
No. I was going to say, the great thing is, again, it's ubiquitous enough that it can be whatever you want it to be. That's the wonderful thing about it. It's my interpretation is no less valid than anyone else's interpretation. That's why the great thing about star dates is, I mean, we completely fudge some in the course of a book. We fudge a lot of the stuff to give enough time for things to happen over the course of the book, and we fudge for star dates because I'm confident that no one is going to sit there and go through each star date to just check it correlates it. They mostly correlate, at least roughly, but it's like we get a bit squiffy in a couple of places, but it's Greenwich Mean Time and daylight savings. That's the excuse.
The next time I have a vacation, I can sit and go through this. No, I will say though that I'm sitting here with Mike's. When they started to screw up star dates and had no idea, Mike did a memo where he literally overlaid the 1,000 units from 000 to 999 in a year to the Gregorian calendar, so that you had more or less three digits to a day. But he did that and printed it out every year so that everybody would look and get an idea. And if you wanted to skip a week, then you're going to skip this many star dates and all of that. So, and in that guide, the thing that everybody was working with at the time was a January to December year. So that's
the biggest fudge we make in the book, and it's a deliberate fudge. It's the idea that Jean-Luc Picard would be cleared to return to service a week after Best of Both Worlds, because family happens, and that's supposed to be like a week later than what happens in and it's like there is no way on anyone's planet that after what Jean-Luc Picard had experienced, they'd clear him for duty a week later. So we fudge that, and we about six months. Whether or not you'd ever let him back in charge of a starship, that's a different discussion. But we definitely kind of stretched the back end out.
Come on, it's like Kirk after a grateful Federation since it's lonely eyes to you. No. Well,
there's more than one Liam Shaw out there, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just going, my color, the world now thinks Memory Alpha is a computer, is a digital online site. But to me, Memory Alpha is the planetoid that the Zetars hit, that Miro Remain was a librarian going to. So to me, Memory Alpha has always been more of a library, than a museum. So a librarian, not a curator, basically. So that's what, that's where that's where it came from. But it dawns on me every once in a while that a whole generation, especially the generation that's never watched the original series, has no idea, that Memory Alpha came from that. Okay. Okay, everybody. Chatter. Any actual...
Can I just give a quick shout out to Annie in the chat, who
you
was
chat
the proofreader?
Shout at everybody.
Annie was our proofreader who suffered through the lack of I have issues with the Oxford comma. Yes, Annie. Hello, Annie. And so Annie had to read through this book multiple times, fixing my grammar, and also converting it from British English to American English, because we made the decision to embrace the Americanisms there. So we had to do all that. And who suffered through the death of poor Conan, of the Conan many times, sort of thing. And poor Ardax, every time she read it, she was like, this time he'll survive. And no, he never does. So sorry, Annie. Wait, what is this?
Anytime, hi Josh. Anytime I try to figure out how timekeeping and calendars work when Fast and the Light travel is involved, it makes my brain hurt. I know. Just like time travel. Yes. Okay, that was my best Janeway. Sorry. Okay, everybody's heading out. Listen, everybody, it's just, this is for something that's been in the works for a while and to geek out on the kind of thing. We live in a world where, I mean, I used to say like in the 80s and 90s, there were like 8 people that enjoy doing what I do. And we, at least one thing about the internet and social media and the connection there is we know that the audience for all of this, or the audience that didn't know it was audience, is a lot larger than it used to be. But I'm sorry, maybe I'll get to talk to Eric sometime. But
Eric would love to do that. I'd love to help you arrange that. And I have a bit of news, exclusive news.
Oh, okay. We're gonna break some news here, everybody.
Breaking news.
Come on, Tony. Where are you with the Trek movie? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. We're doing an audio version of a book. There is an audio adaptation being done. It is a full cast of characters, so it's going to be different people doing each roles. We have some very exciting people already cast. Chapter 1 is already cast, I believe, and going into production in about a week or two. And we're currently casting for Chapter 2. If you follow us on the social medias of the Twitter and all this, you can find us there. This is being done by Stephen Van Doren, who did the audio book for Edge of Midnight. But yes, there will be an audio version of We Have Engaged the Borg, the oral history of Battle of Wolf 359. And we're very excited to have that come out. So you can then sit on the beach in Risa with your Horgan, with your earpods in, listening to the greatest battle in the history of the Federation.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but are there any names that are doing voice work, the voice cast?
I will tell you. Okay, here you go. Here's the big exclusive. The name of the author, the person who is the author of Wolf 359, is Jessie Earl, who you may know as Jessie Gender from her videos. Jessie is the author in We Have Engaged the Borg, and she is going to be recording all of that dialogue. A lot of stuff there, but we're very excited to have her on board to do that. So,
you mean the narrative parts that aren't characters speaking?
Well, no, but the author is a character in the book. The author.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the stage manager in our town. It's like the narrative. Narrative author.
Partly. So because the book is framed as interviews, sometimes the author will ask a question to the person they are interviewing, and all of the interlude sections, all of the stuff on the hood, are the author's recollections as they're traveling to the memorial station. So all of those sections as well. But yeah, Jessie is going to be the author.
All right. Well, that's awesome. And do we have a time frame on that, or is it? It's getting.
I mean, it's getting. It's definitely this year. It's probably sooner than you think, than we think. But if you just keep an eye on thing, that's going to be released as a free podcast, so you can just download each. I think what we'll probably do is we'll release a season, and each week we'll drop one of the interviews as you go along. I mean, look, Todd, if you're listening, if you're available, if you want to do Liam Shaw.
There we go. Let's see. Good. Everybody's having a good time. Listen, we better wrap it up. It's been way over. Thank you for the bit. I didn't even ask you how much time you had, but if we got going, hopefully it was
all the time in the world.
Everybody, there we go. All the time and then some. We have engaged the Borg there. Paul and his cohort. Eric put it together. It's free to download. Put it on your pad today. It's gorgeous.
It's free in this economy? Yes, it is.
We have the gig economy. We have this economy. There we are. Again, thank you so much, Andy, for joining us today. And with all the
my pleasure. That's fun.
We hopefully had a lot of good new eyeballs. And this will be posted as soon as we can get to it the next few days. Mm-hmm. So a good geek out audience. Anyway, thank you so much. And I look forward to the next time we can cross paths and in live action.
I'd love to do it again. And definitely we'll get Eric on, because I think Eric would love to talk to you both about this and also the USS Pershing series. So check that out.
Very good. Okay. Thanks much. Okay, everybody. I kind of kept an eye on the chat here, but we basically are down to the end. So I think that's going to do it here for the end. Before I lose everybody, I do want to remind you that this is almost embarrassing. It's still up. If anybody wants to take advantage of the holiday offers, it was meant to be a gift box. You can do it for yourself. I had somebody join because I hadn't taken it down yet for the holidays. So this will be the last call for the Portal 47 in a box gift offer. It's there for the 6 months or 12 months. It's a huge saving and the cool stuff and the swag. They're at LarryNemechek.com doing that. And of course, LarryNemechek.com is where you can also looking at the bright new year there for Trekland Treks. Pandemic put a real dent in that, but people are starting to make inquiries again. So if you're looking at 2024, you're headed this way to LA, you want to do your own customized away team, we'll help you do that, and then be your guide when you're here for everything. TreklandTreks.com. Of course, it's a brand new year. Well, we're 2-3 weeks in, and we still owe so much to our Patreon folks. So here is my big thanks, as always, to our TTL Club. Yeah, I'm talking about Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd. Sorry, guys. I'm giving you your screen time there. Boom. Hey, Anne-Marie, Justin Porteous, Glinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecast, Andrew Jasimski, and our live wires, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Halbert Gunnjonsson, Alan Hoensi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, I have a very simple Patreon there. Some say it might be too simple, but $5, $10 a month, patreon.com/Trekland Live. We've slowly been building it up. It's been a year now since we occasionally, maybe once a month or so, have guests. That's been awesome. Of course, it's Wednesday. So what's been up for a day already? This week's Trek Files. We're back with the animated series pitch that was happening until the young writer went against the protocol grain, and none other than Dorothy Fontana had to tell someone she was mentoring that he broke the rules. But there's a silver lining. There's a happy ending to the story. You want to listen to the Trek Files this week. Wherever you find podcasts are caught, the documents, and you want to make sure and catch them, are at our Facebook page, as always. And elsewhere, just around the galaxy, around the local sector. I'm still there, Nemechek, at Twitter. And yeah, Trekland here on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Also Instagram, also Facebook. And Portal47.net. I just told you the silly special is still up. You can just join for normals, though, if you want to. We would love to have you. I've got Mike Sussman as our guest this month, and I've been after Mike for ages. Now, this is almost never. Our open houses are public, and we just had Nick Meyer. You can find that on YouTube. But otherwise, you have to be a Portal 47 member, enjoy the roundtables, enjoy the sharing from my archives, and enjoy our behind-the-scenes guests. So many of them you do not see, really, being interviewed, being on convention stages. There's a lot more of that now, thank goodness, with our YouTube explosion. But still, in the 7 going on 8 years of Portal 47, the vast majority of those folks that have been our guests, some of them right there, have not been really out in public. But we're trying to remedy that and get them on film, get them recorded, aside from a long-term interview. But all of Portal 47 is all about the behind-the-scenes folks and publicizing them, but also just getting their stories preserved and their insights and their memories and what they can tell us about the folks who have already passed, as well as just all the different guilds and persuasions and career paths that go to make the Star Trek that we love on the surface, that we fall in love with the actors first and the writers next, and then so much more even beyond that. That's Portal 47, and that's what I do, and that's why I enjoy having Trekland Tuesdays live now, to be able to have folks like Andy on, who are giving us sidebar Star Trek, a direct feed to the heart, but it's still in that world of Trek adjacent. It's, even though we enjoy it so much. So everybody, a different kind of a show. Again, it's always special when we have a guest. So thank you for being here. Thank you if you're up late around the world. But it's so great to see you. Look, just till we see you next time, would you please? If you're watching this live, that's great. But if you're watching us later, it'd be great to have you on with us on a Tuesday afternoon. So leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. That's fine. That's wonderful. But if you're here with us live, you can jump in this wonderful chat of the TTL community and have it be a little more immediate. But live or later, I'm so glad you're here with us and enjoying the show. We will see you next Tuesday. Until then, stay healthy. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check your sources. And Trek well, would you? Oh, TeePublic store, by the way. Trek well, everybody.